Welcome back to Starz Recapped, your home for fast, thrilling, and fully packed movie breakdowns. Today we're diving into the dark and pulse-pounding world of Vicious 2025, a film that blends psychological horror with high-stakes mystery, leaving audiences guessing until the final frame. In this story, nothing is what it seems. A quiet town hides violent secrets. A survivor haunted by her past is pushed into a deadly game, and every clue points to a truth more brutal than she ever imagined. So buckle up, grab your headphones, and get ready as we unravel every twist, every hidden message, and the shocking ending that made this film the talk of 2025. This is Vicious 2025, fully explained, right here on Starz Recapped. The movie opens with a haunting scene. Polly, a 32-year-old woman, sits trembling, eyes red, voice shaking, completely drained of hope. She's speaking to a girl who seems to be listening closely. Polly keeps repeating that no matter how hard she tries, nothing in her life ever changes. Everything feels stuck, frozen in the same pain. When the girl finally asks what Polly truly wants, Polly whispers, "I just want it all to stop." At first, the moment feels like a random emotional breakdown, but by the end of the film, these lines become the key to understanding everything. From here, the story rewinds. We see Polly returning to the house she's been living in. Through the cluttered rooms, ignored messages, and silence surrounding her, we learn the truth. She's isolated, exhausted, drifting through life with no direction. She's quit multiple jobs, has no partner, and carries the weight of an emotional state she hasn't escaped in years. The house actually belongs to her older sister, Lainey, who moved with her family to a bigger place, leaving Polly to stay here alone for a while. It's a quiet suburban neighborhood, cold and still during winter. One night, the doorbell rings. Polly opens the door to find an elderly woman standing outside, confused and shivering in the freezing air. She has no phone, only a faint memory of her son's number. Out of sympathy, Polly lets her in. Things seem normal at first, until they're not. The woman asks only for a glass of water. But while she sits, we notice something chilling. 2 of her fingers are missing, the wounds looking disturbingly fresh. She carries a small suitcase and scans the house with unnerving interest, especially the family photos. As Polly hands her the water, the woman smiles gently and asks personal questions, whether Polly is married, whether she has kids. Polly explains that she lives alone and that the house belongs to her sister, though she never mentions Lainey's name. Then everything shifts. The old woman quietly opens her suitcase, pulls out a small wooden box, and sets it on the table. She calmly announces, "I'm going to begin now." Polly is confused, uneasy. The woman glances toward a corner of the room as if something invisible is standing there. She touches her forehead, terrified for a brief moment, something the audience should remember later. Inside the wooden box is an hourglass filled with sand. The woman pushes it toward Polly and says, "This belongs to you now." Polly, alarmed, suggests they wait outside for help, but the woman interrupts her with a chilling statement. "You're dying. I'm sorry, but tonight is the night." In the film, this mysterious character is never given a name. She's simply the woman, played by Kathryn Hunter. She tells Polly that no matter what she feels or believes, the truth is the same. Her time runs out tonight. Unless, she begins, but stops, saying Polly wouldn't understand. She warns her not to tell anyone, admitting softly, "I never did." Panicked but trying to stay respectful, Polly tells her to leave and threatens to call the police if she has to. She pushes the wooden box toward the door, desperately trying to get the woman out of her home. Just as the old woman was about to walk away, she suddenly turned back and called Polly by her name, something she should not have known. The shock froze Polly in place. When she asked how the woman knew who she was, the stranger only murmured something eerie, describing it as a never-ending nightmare. One you can't wake up from. She apologized softly, almost pitying Polly, before disappearing into the cold night. Polly rushed inside and locked the door, trying to steady her breathing. When she peeked through the window a moment later, the woman had vanished completely. But lying in the middle of the street was that same wooden box, as if it had been purposely abandoned right in front of her home. Uneasy and shaking, Polly called her mother to explain what happened. Her voice cracked as she described the encounter. Her mother was stunned. She let a strange woman into the house and immediately blamed the incident on Polly's medication, fogging her judgment. But when Polly mentioned that the woman claimed she would die that night, and tried giving her the mysterious box, her mother's tone shifted. Worried but trying to stay calm, she told Polly to forget it and focus on her job interview the next day. Polly tried to distract herself by picking out outfits and sending pictures to her mom, but every time she lifted the camera, shadows in the corners seemed to shift. She felt a presence behind her, a woman-shaped silhouette lingering just outside her vision. Startled, she hurried downstairs to smoke. Her mother called again. Polly admitted she could smell her mother's perfume, even though she was alone. Her mother brushed it off as anxiety, but then Polly noticed something chilling. The wooden box was sitting on the table inside the house. She knew she never brought it in. Her mother insisted she must have forgotten until the sand hourglass inside came into sight. Then, her mother's voice changed. "You haven't started it yet." Polly froze. She never told her mother about the hourglass. The voice continued, "I'm not your mother." It spoke exactly like her, but colder, sharper, and far too aware. It began listing things no one else could possibly know. Secrets Polly never shared, memories she never told anyone. Then came the cruelty. "You've always been slow. Tonight you die." A soft, haunting song dedicated to the one I love began playing through the phone. Horrified, Polly hung up. Immediately the doorbell rang, followed by heavy pounding. Her nightmare had only just begun. Her phone buzzed again, her mother's number. But the voice wasn't her mother's. It was the same malicious entity tied to the box, shifting its tone and shape as it pleased. It mocked her life, her failed attempts at hobbies, her inability to keep a job, her fear of love, the way she pushed people away. It knew everything. "You'll die tonight," it repeated. "Unless," Polly begged to know how to stop it. The creature hissed back. "Look inside the box. It needs 3 things. Something you hate, something you need, and something you love. And do not lie. We see everything." The call snapped off. Desperate to try something, anything, Polly placed her pack of cigarettes inside the box, the one thing she truly hated about herself. But nothing happened. The box didn't respond. A few moments later, Polly suddenly started choking. She fell to the floor, gasping, and then coughed up a metal key. Horrified and shaking, she rushed out of the house and ran to a neighbor's door. Only one woman answered. Polly begged her to call the police. At first, the neighbor seemed normal, until her behavior shifted. Her eyes changed. Her voice changed, and Polly realized the entity had reached her too. The woman grabbed a kitchen knife and sliced her own skin, whispering, "No one will save you. We're everywhere." On her chest were words carved into her flesh. "Don't you dare." Polly bolted out the door, her hands smeared with blood, stumbling home in terror. Everything now felt unreal, exactly like the old woman had warned, a nightmare with no exit. Trying to convince herself she was hallucinating, Polly threw the wooden box and hourglass to the floor. But the moment they hit the ground, they appeared right back on the table, untouched. She had no control at all, except over her choices. She decided to flee the house, but just as she reached the door, a family photo fell from the wall and her phone rang. This time, the voice on the other end sounded exactly like her late father. Paralyzed with fear, Polly whispered, "You're not him." But the voice responded with memories only her real father would know, especially the day he died, and the moment she lost her faith after praying for a miracle that never came. The entity mocked her attempt with the cigarette pack. "We both know that wasn't the truth," it said. Shaking, Polly used the mysterious key she had vomited earlier to unlock her walk-in closet. Inside, she found old photos of her sick father and a small cross she hadn't touched in years. Suddenly, she saw a grotesque vision of her father's dying body reaching toward her. She ran out, screaming. Realizing her broken faith was what she truly hated most, she placed the cross inside the box. When she opened it again, the cross had vanished. Task 1 was complete. Then the second trial began. Something she needed. The sand inside the hourglass began to fall again. A female voice echoed through the house. Polly turned toward a mirror and her reflection smiled back at her, but not in a human way. It held garden cutters in its hand. The reflection slammed its head into the mirror, cracking the glass. Polly looked down. Those same cutters were now in her own hand. She didn't know why, but she understood. This was another clue. Her phone rang. It was her sister, Lainey. Lainey sounded frantic, asking why Polly hadn't answered her calls for the last 20 minutes. Polly was confused. She hadn't received anything. Then Lainey said Polly had called her earlier saying someone was dead and that Allie was in danger. Polly swore she never made that call. But what terrified her most was the next sentence. "Polly, I can see your car in front of my house." Polly was home, Someone, or something, was using her identity. The call cut off. Polly ran to leave, but the door locked itself. She tried smashing windows, pulling handles, nothing worked. Trapped, she shouted, "What do you want from me?" The TV flickered on. It showed a video, maybe Allie, maybe a childhood clip of Polly herself. But the camera zoomed onto the fingers, and Polly understood instantly. The entity wanted her to give up a finger. If she didn't, it might go after Allie. Crying, shaking uncontrollably, Polly lifted the garden cutters. With one brutal snap, she severed her pinky, screaming in agony. When the TV shut off, she wrapped her hand barely conscious. But the entity wasn't done. It appeared again, wearing her mother's voice and face, ordering Polly to stop crying and love herself. When Polly opened the box, the severed pinky was still there, rejected. The TV flickered again. The phone screen displayed the word wrong. Polly begged, sobbing, "What do you want from me?" The creature finally revealed its true intention. It lifted its hand, showing a finger missing, clearly demonstrating what it wanted from Polly. She realized, too late, that she'd misunderstood. It never wanted the toe she had cut, it wanted a finger from her hand. Already shaking from pain and fear, Polly understood she had no way out. Crying, nearly fainting, she forced herself to remove one of her own fingers and dropped it into the wooden box. The moment it touched the inside, the lights across the house died at once. Only then did everything click. The old woman who came to her door with fresh finger wounds, she wasn't just a stranger. She must have been the previous victim trying to pass the curse on before it consumed her. What Polly was experiencing now was the same nightmare the woman had once lived. When she opened the box again, the finger had vanished. Task 2 was complete. She had surrendered something essential to her. The hourglass flipped on its own, signaling the third and final trial. She now had to give up something she loved. And then, with a soft click, the front door unlocked by itself. The scene shifted. Polly was suddenly at her sister Lainey's house. She ran inside and found Lainey lying upstairs, unconscious, unmoving. Ally was collapsed on the floor as well. Polly broke down, sobbing, thinking she was too late. Music began playing in the house. When she turned it off, the cursed box and hourglass were sitting right behind her. In rage, she threw the box across the room. Immediately, every phone in the house began ringing at once. Polly answered one. A young voice, Allie's, spoke through the speaker. It calmly reminded her that she still hadn't completed the last sacrifice. She needed to give up something that truly mattered, something she loved deeply. Polly's tears fell as she whispered, "I love Ally." Holding a knife, she stepped into the girl's room. Ally panicked, begging Polly to choose her nose or her eye, anything but her life. But Polly didn't hurt her. She suddenly understood the meaning of the final task. She gently cut a lock of Ally's hair and placed it into the box. "I'll always love you," she whispered. When she opened the box again, the hair was gone. The offering had been accepted. But what came next shattered her. She rushed downstairs and found her sister awake, alive, calling her name. She hurried back to Allie, who was also conscious again, crying and laughing with relief. But then Allie's face twisted. Her smile changed. Her voice grew cold. Without warning, Ally plunged a knife into Polly's chest. Polly jolted awake, back at her own dining table. The box and hourglass sat in front of her exactly as before, untouched. None of what she saw at Lainey's house had changed her reality. Desperate, she began offering anything she could find, her ring, her necklace. Both disappeared instantly. The hourglass reset again. She even cut herself and let her blood drip into the box. But a horrifying skeletal hand reached up and grabbed her wrist. She tore herself free and screamed, "What do you want from me?" Then she remembered the old woman, confused and trembling, knocking at her door earlier. That woman must have been doing exactly what Polly was doing now, trying to pass the curse onward. Panicking, Polly ran outside and began pounding on doors throughout the neighborhood. Each one stayed shut, until finally one door opened. A girl named Thara stood there. And just like the old woman earlier, Polly now looked like the desperate, terrified stranger trying to escape the nightmare by handing it off. The girl opened the door and let Polly step inside, mentioning casually that her parents would return soon. Polly tried to speak, but the terror twisting inside her made it impossible to explain anything clearly. While the girl stepped away to make tea, Polly caught a horrifying glimpse. Thera standing in the hallway, drenched in blood. Polly blinked and the vision vanished, but the message was unmistakable. The curse had chosen its next target. With trembling hands, Polly removed the wooden box from her bag and placed it on the table. She set the hourglass beside it. Thera, confused, asked what the strange box was for. Polly stared at her and asked quietly, Your name? Is it Tara? The girl froze. She had never introduced herself. Her expression tightened. She urged Polly to leave immediately, but Polly, exhausted beyond fear, whispered, "You'll understand soon," and repeated the same hopeless words we heard at the beginning, about trying and trying, yet never escaping the same pain. Finally, Polly said, "I'm going to begin now." She accused Thera of lying. Her parents weren't coming back, at least not in the way she hoped. Then Polly pushed the box closer to her and said, "This belongs to you now, and tonight you won't survive." Panic rushed across Thera's face. She insisted she only wanted to help Polly. But Polly already knew how this story ended. Later that night, Polly sat by her fireplace, exhausted. Without warning, the old woman appeared behind her, clutching the cursed box. Her voice trembled as she confessed, "It wants me to kill you." Polly backed away in terror. The woman explained that the box never releases its victims. It latched onto her long ago, after she, too, opened her door to someone who knocked. That was the last knock she ever heard. Maybe, she said, the box chooses people who are already fragile inside. She told Polly she believed she was a good person, but the curse didn't care. She admitted she had cut herself, begged, tried everything to break free, but the box demanded more. It demanded fear. The two struggled, and Polly grabbed a pair of scissors, stabbing the woman in desperation. As she collapsed, she whispered her final words, telling Polly not to fear death anymore, to stop letting terror rule her. When the old woman died, Polly noticed the extent of her suffering. Half her face damaged, one eye missing. The box had tormented her for years. Polly finally understood. The entity fed on fear itself. So she decided to stop giving it what it wanted. She placed the hourglass in front of her, watching the sand slip through, and for the first time, she didn't panic. The next morning, Lainey and Ally came downstairs alive, as if everything had returned to normal. But Lainey noticed the living room was a mess, and Polly's clothes were scattered, even though Polly wasn't there. Polly woke in her own house, disoriented. For a moment, she thought everything had been a dream, until she saw her missing fingers. Reality hit her like ice. She looked out her window and saw the neighbor she had once fled to, alive and unharmed. Relieved, Polly ran to Lainey's house and hugged Ally tightly, promising she would return soon. She had one last place to check: Thera's house. When Thera answered the door, Polly demanded the box back, convinced the girl had taken it. But Thera looked honestly confused. She insisted Polly must be mistaken. Her parents were simply away visiting for Christmas. Polly, now calmer, stepped aside and lit a cigarette, but then her phone buzzed with an incoming call. Her hand trembled. She couldn't bring herself to look at the screen. Just moments after Thera shut the door, the truth revealed itself in a chilling way. The hallway wall was smeared with words written in blood, warnings meant for Polly. "Don't speak to anyone. Don't trust anyone. She's lying." Thera stepped forward, and that's when Polly noticed another horrifying detail. Several of the girl's fingers were gone. Calmly, almost mechanically, Thera placed something small into the cursed box, as though completing a ritual she could no longer resist. Polly moved deeper into the house and entered the dining room. There, lifeless at the table, were Thera's parents, silent witnesses to the terror that had already unfolded. Before anything else could happen, Thera's phone rang, echoing sharply through the room. The scene cut to black. The box's merciless cycle wasn't over. Not even close. Many viewers might see this movie as a straightforward supernatural horror, but beneath its surface lies a far more complex message, a psychological portrait of someone being consumed by guilt and fear. On the outside, it resembles a familiar horror blueprint. An isolated girl, a cursed box governed by strange rules, and ominous forces lurking just out of sight. But the deeper meaning is far more personal. The unseen entity haunting Polly isn't just a monster. It's the physical shape of her inner torment. Director Bryan Bertino has mentioned that he uses horror as a way to show emotional suffering made real, and that theme is clear here. The box symbolizes Polly's spiraling anxiety, something that grows more powerful the more she tries to bury it. Instead of a simple supernatural object, it becomes a metaphor for her fractured mental state. Polly's life is already weighed down by the loss of her father and a strained relationship with her sister, Lainey. She carries a heavy load of blame for what she did, what she didn't do, and what she believes she ruined. That guilt festers until it becomes something monstrous. The box represents that burden. Every fear she hides, every emotion she forces down, collects inside it like poison. In the end, the story isn't about a creature stalking Polly from the shadows. It's about the more terrifying monster she carries within herself. And that wraps up the dark and haunting journey of Vicious. A story that begins with a cursed box and ends with a chilling truth. Sometimes the scariest battles aren't with monsters lurking in the shadows, but with the fears we try hardest to ignore. Polly's fight wasn't just against a supernatural force, it was against her own guilt, her own pain, and the darkness that slowly consumed her life. And just when we think the nightmare is over, the film reminds us that the box never really stops. It only waits for its next victim. If you enjoyed this recap and want more twisted stories, deep breakdowns, and hidden meanings behind your favorite movies, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Starz Recapped. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss the next story we unravel. Thanks for watching, and remember, never open a door unless you're ready for what's on the other side.